Hello, we're trying something slightly new today. A quick look at 5 games that I've been playing over the last month. But we're not going to waste any time, so let's go. First up is the hottest box of birds in board gaming right now, Wingspan. I've played this 3 times over, well, since it came out, a couple of times in the last month. And, well, for those of you hoping for some vicious teardown, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed because I am fully kind of bought in on this one. I really like Wingspan. And obviously it's got great production values. And if you know anything about it, you know that it's got these nice, smooth, accessible mechanics. And those are all great factors in its favour. But what just really gets me about this game is just how it makes me feel playing it. So I was playing it a couple of days ago, and you go through probably the first couple of rounds just building up and kind of planning out building up your engine type of thing. And then you go into the third round of 4, and I just get this tension inside me, just gripping me, as it builds towards its climax. I love that. It's something that I've always experienced a lot in Splendor, even though this is quite a bit different. It still has that, oh my god, have I built this right? Am I going to make it to hit the goals that I've kind of set for myself in this one? I do recognise that there's a bit of a possible negative in Wingspan around the card draw. You're looking to create combos between cards drawn from some massive deck, and you don't have very high rates of gaining cards, not compared to kind of other games in the genre. So there's definitely a sense that there could be a luck element to it, just kind of studying that from the outside. I've not seen that. Rather, what I get from it is that while there is an unpredictability involved in what you're drawing, there's always a route through that. And so the game is much more about how am I going to deal with what I've got, and what are the best combinations of things that I can create from the cards, from the birds that I am attracting to my aviary. And I really like how that creates the kind of replay value that's in this game. It means that every time I go into playing Wingspan, I don't know exactly what I'm going to face, what I'm going to create. And that makes it, that little hint of the unknown makes it so exciting. And I'm sure, and I know other games do this as well. But I've really noticed it playing this recently. So I am 100% on board with Wingspan. The mechanics get out of the way and let the experience soar. No! Spacegate Odyssey comes eye-rollingly close to infringing on one of my favourite IPs, for the reason, I think, that it gives everyone that intuition about what it is you're trying to do in this game. Sending people through wormholes to new worlds, and it kind of needs that because mechanically there is a lot going on. You have area control of the various unique planets. You are building your own space station out of tiles and then moving colonist meeples through it in order to get to the space gate that you have on board. And all of that is driven by an action selection mechanic on a central board. It's quite a lot. Which, don't get me wrong, I love heavy games. That's often what I go for. The action selection mechanic in this game is particularly good. There are 5 kind of rooms on the station, each representing a different action that you can perform. and you'll have worker meeples spread throughout these rooms. And when it's your turn, you move one of your guys into a room in order to activate that room and take that action. The more people you have in there, when you do that, the bigger the action is. So if you repeatedly trigger the same room, you get a bigger and bigger action from that. However, you also let everyone else who have meeples in that room do that action at the same time. So you're constantly interacting through that, and it means you're trying to predict, where people might want to go, and you have these wonderful moments where you think, yes, I get to do bonus actions, or oh no, I'm not in that room, lame. And that's nice. Although I do have this feeling that it kind of all works out in the wash. That you spend as much time missing out on actions or doing only minor things, or people intentionally taking actions that they know that you can't benefit from. Hey, it's part of the game. That kind of undercuts it a little bit. The building of your own space station, that's where things really do go slightly wrong for me. It's sold as this really interesting central puzzle, and there's even a involved changing the value of the rooms and things in your space station mechanic in there as well. But it's not as big a puzzle as it seems when you first play. And after a couple of games, it's kind of degenerates a little bit. Like there are some building patterns that just work better. The movement of your colonists through the station, one of the actions is to move your colonists into one of the rooms, and there are 3 types of rooms, so you build 3 wings of your station according to the colour of those rooms. You do that, and then you can always move your guys really quickly through those spaces. And it's just bad to go from one room colour to another. Likewise, if you put an airlock where colonists enter your station, and a warp gate where they leave right next to each other, that is the most efficient way of getting colonists down onto the planets that you can do. And so therefore, it kind of just turns into this build 3 wings, stick one of those or 2 of those pairs together, and hey, there you go, that's your space station. And that's disappointing, particularly when it takes so long for the game to really get moving as well. So, Spacegate Odyssey, not as good as I wanted it to be. But there is on creakingshelves.com a full review of this, and there'll be a link to it down in the description for you to check out if you want more info.
Oh, 5 more minutes. 5.
Carpe Diem, one of the latest Stefan Feld Euro games, the competitor to Wingspan at the Kennerspiel des Jahres Awards not too long ago. And oh my god, does it have a tedious looking box and an equally tedious description. Drafting tiles to build your own Roman estate and get goods and do Euro things and earn points. It's not the most exciting sounding box. But oh my god, is it good! The key to this is in its scoring mechanics. So you play this game, got 4 rounds, and those rounds are just made up of drafting a few tiles. It's got a neat little drafting mechanic, but that's not what's important here. And placing those tiles out into your estate to build things. At the end of every round, you score something, and you have this grid of cards on the board. Each of those cards is an objective. Maybe trade in a couple of goods, a couple of chickens, or maybe build a certain combination of buildings in your estate. Each round you are going to place out one of your little discs between two of those cards in order to say, I am scoring those two cards right now. Once that disc's there, it's there for the entire game, so that's it. Now, you only have 7 turns in a round, and each of these scoring cards pretty much requires at least 2 or 3 different tiles. So you need to be really on top of this if you're going to score anything. But it gets worse, because if you go to one of these cards and you can't complete it at all, you lose points. And that just makes the entire process so tense. Oh, it's delightful. Every action kind of feels like it counts. And what's even better is that you can fulfill the criteria of these cards multiple times if you're able to. So you have this massive difference between messing up and not fulfilling either of the cards, and being exceedingly efficient at managing to fulfill ones multiple times. And that's great, because then you can feel brilliant just for fulfilling 2 cards. And as you play more, like, the sky's the limit in how well you can do off of these things. And that is the genius of Carpe Diem. Annoyingly, it has a bunch of annoying printing decisions, should we say, colours that are way too similar when they shouldn't be, and a little too dissimilar when they should be. But if you can see past that, Carpe Diem is really worth checking out. I don't own Hellboy, so that's why we have a digital box on the screen right now. But I have had a chance to play it, just the one scenario, so bear that in mind for these thoughts. It is classic dungeon crawl, classic co-op dungeon crawl, but it nails the details. So, for example, scenery. In Hellboy you have a scenery mechanic. You can have little scenery tiles in the spaces where people and monsters and things occupy. But what scenery does is it has a little number value on it, and whenever someone attacks into a space that has scenery, the scenery has to be removed first. Now that's a fairly small, innocuous rule, right? But the impact that has is that it feels like your characters are in there and they're diving for cover behind the scenery and it gets blown up first. It's way more cinematic than classical other dungeon crawlers are with their use of terrain and things like that. And mechanically it makes for interesting opportunities for your characters, but also difficulties, because when the enemies are in a space with scenery, they get that benefit. And any rule that works both to give you a benefit and a detriment depending on the situation is a really good rule. And Hellboy is full of these touches. That's what makes it really quite impressive. What hasn't worked quite so well, or what I wasn't able to get out of it, and I think a few other reviewers have said similarly, is the story / theme. The scenario that we played felt, if not generic, then kind of the next thing to that. Like, the way it's presented, like, there is some flavour going in, but it was very, these people are missing, let's go find them, maybe. Oh, there's monsters, okay. And then you work your way through a series of rooms fighting stuff. And the fighting's good, don't get me wrong, like I said, the mechanics of this are great. But it ends up feeling a bit like a vehicle for combat. Maybe that's fine. But I would have liked a bit more immersion, story, mystery to solve a little bit. And that doesn't quite work, and particularly the end of scenarios, and I know this has been mentioned elsewhere, that there is no text. So you work your way through a few stages, and you fight a big boss, and that's it. There's nothing to read, which is bizarre, and it feels bizarre. And it's because you reach this mechanical climax by you defeat the boss, but then you get no thematic resolution to the story. You're just left there hanging. And you feel like you're hanging. You know, you're expecting some kind of conclusion. Okay, that's enough big box games. Let's take a look at something a little smaller. This is Silver and Gold, which I imported from Germany a few weeks ago. So it's due to be coming out in English. If it hasn't already, then reasonably soon. So keep an eye out for it, because I really rather like it. It is a roll and write. Oh god, another one, right? And this one has the unique twist of being a game where you write on your cards. So it is a deck of cards and some pens, and these cards have all been covered in this reflective plasticky material so that you can write on them with the whiteboard markers, and then wipe them clean again after you finish playing, which is really nice, and more importantly, lets you do a fair bit more interesting things than your conventional roll and write, which you're stuck with one pad of paper where, you know, sheets have to always be the same for all players. Each turn, a card gets flipped. Fill out that shape on your island if you can. If you can't fit it, because these do get quite tight, then you only get to cross off a single square, which is nice. You get a difference there immediately between being super efficient and managing to fit everything perfectly, and failing to do so. And while you might tactically only fill out a single square under certain circumstances, you're going to be rewarded for carefully positioning things. And there is definitely a bit of luck involved in this, but what you have is 2 island cards at the same time, which gives you a bit of leeway. You know, do I put this shape into Island 1 or Island 2? And there's a bunch of symbols on these islands as well that give you rewards when you cross them off. Either letting you cross out extra spaces or working towards some kind of global scoring stuff, which often has a kind of timing element tied to it. So you might want to take actions which make it harder to fit in future shapes, but that get you closer to scoring immediately. And that balance comes out really nicely. There's some, for a roll and write games are traditionally very kind of head down, do your own thing, not much interaction. But I did find in this one, both because of that kind of global scoring, and also because of a fairly subtle mechanic around turn order and how you draft new cards, that I would definitely be looking up and checking how far what everyone else was like, what they were about to do, and how that affects what I want to do this turn. So yeah, it's easy, I find, to recommend smaller games because, you know, it's not such a big outlay of cash, rather than saying, oh yeah, you should definitely go buy Hellboy right now, that's $100 or whatever. This is 10 to 20 kind of price range. But this is one that has really impressed me so far. Just leave it alone. thank you all for watching. Just imagine Hellboy set up here as well. What did you think of our new little video style? I would like to possibly do these monthly. Certainly it's something to aim for. Might manage it if you've enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments, what have you played this month that you've enjoyed? Let's get this conversation going, and I will see you all again soon.